mentioned the thing about everybody thinks they're interesting. That's like kind of the reason I started the podcast, is because I'm like, I feel like I'm not an expert in anything.
Right.
I feel like I have really nothing to share, but like, I don't know if I feel qualified to go teach anybody anything.
Right.
Like to any certain degree. So that's literally the reason that the word Tyro kind of came to me.
Yeah. Explain that. What does that mean?
Yeah. So Tyro, well, I'll take it from the beginning. My mom and I were having a conversation. I graduated college. I had like really no idea what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I've always had broad interests.
Mm-hmm.
I played baseball in college, wanted to be a pro baseball player,
Yeah.
didn't come to fruition. And I just had no idea what I wanted to do. And she was like, why don't you just start talking to people?
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a good idea. I like to talk. Like, I like to learn about things. I have a broad spectrum of interests, like I mentioned. A podcast is a perfect way to sort of, to harken back what I was just mentioning. Like, if I said, hey, Dallas, you want to hang out and talk for 2 hours on a Sunday?
Yeah.
If I didn't have a podcast, the likelihood of that happening is probably pretty low.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
That's
just
funny. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. When you put it like that, I'd be like, maybe next time or after class we'll talk.
Yeah, come dap me up after class, right?
And it's not you. It's just like, yeah, people get caught up in their lives.
Exactly. Well, and it's just not having the podcast for somebody that doesn't, like, you're the guest, you're providing me value right now.
Yeah.
Because you have insight and some experiences that I'm super excited to get into, but the value that I'm providing you is, albeit probably still smaller than what you're providing me, is a chance to sort of explore your own thoughts and get a platform where you can actually talk and delineate and share things that you're passionate about.
That's a great word.
So
yeah, I mean, I think I try to be a sponge with everything I do, and like a big message to my little sister and niece and people like in my circle is just having like awareness, self-awareness, and if you can take away just one thing from a conversation or from an interaction, that compiles over time, and you're gonna feel a lot better about yourself, and you're gonna have more confidence in how you move around just by taking something away from everything. Yeah, you need to be switched on like that. You don't want to just be floating through.
And this kind of gives you that chance to be intentional about the conversations you're having. One of my episodes, I think I'm gonna do it every 20 episodes.
Yeah.
Which this will be like my 25th or 26th recording, which is cool. That's already like
it's good.
It's just crazy to think like 21 was my goal.
Yeah.
And I've gotten into that many times before, but basically 90% of podcasts don't make it past 3 episodes. Of the 10% that do, 90% of those don't make it past 20.
That's so interesting.
So my goal was 20. Like
the analytics are there. Yeah.
Once I got to 21, technically I'm a 1%er in terms of podcasting, which is crazy for me. Well, it's like that doesn't mean anything really, but it's just interesting. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. It's been a real blessing. I get to have conversations with people. Oh, but the 20 episodes. Yeah. I'm going to do a solo episode every 20 or so episodes of one lesson that I've learned from each episode.
That's really cool.
That's exactly what you're
really
talking about.
Cool, yeah.
Just one thing from every conversation.
Literally just exactly what I was just saying. Dang, that's so cool, man.
Yeah.
And it'll be good because then you can go back and watch them too, and then probably take something that you didn't need. Yeah.
Yep. Well, so what I've been writing it. So I've been like, I watch every episode.
Yeah.
And even writing the lessons that I've learned from those episodes, I'm like, oh wait, like I don't even remember that from the conversation. For episode 5, like something as simple as my best friend went on a vacation and left his phone at home. That's a lesson that I learned. He didn't need his phone. He had a great time. Just little shit like that. But
no, that's cool. I almost brought a notebook today because I feel like
so did I.
I've only done, like I said, like I think like 2 podcasts, and they're friends, and I wish I would have brought notes because I feel like it flew by, and I feel like I actually took a lot from it. Like, so but I'm gonna probably take notes after this. It's just good.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing is like my buddy Zach Shankin tweeted the other day talking about how the world is nonlinear, like the 80-20 principle, where like 80% of the results come from 20% of the input. Right. He argues it's more like 90-10. But podcasting, for example, you get value from this, I hope.
Yeah.
I get immense value from this. And the world gets value from it. So like there's literally it's not a losing scenario for anyone.
Yeah, that's probably why it's become so popular now and become such a popular avenue for people to take in info.
Yeah. And it's long form, so it's not like bit.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we've kind of already got into it, but I want to officially welcome you to the Tyro Experience. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, of course. No, thanks for having me, man.
It's a real honor.
Appreciate that.
I want to start by saying thank you for the way that you coach, because this is how I have come to know you, is you coach Muay Thai at 10th Planet Austin, and I've had the privilege now of training at several gyms and training under several coaches of different martial arts, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai. And the way that you coach, and my brother is big on this as well, we've discussed it at length, your ability to command respect while also keeping it light and serious, but also transfer your knowledge, your immense knowledge of what you're teaching to people in a really digestible way it's really cool. And I want you to know, I don't know if you know this already, but like, it's not common. Like coaches, a lot, I mean, I'm sure you've been an athlete your whole life.
Yeah.
A lot of coaches don't know how to coach. They know their sport, they know something, but they don't know how to transfer it in a really digestible way. And the way that you navigate that line between commanding respect from the people that are learning from you and taking your time and that you're investing in, while also investing in them, is really cool. So I want to thank you for that.
And that's a huge compliment. That's like one of the biggest compliments I feel like I've ever received. I really appreciate that, man. It doesn't feel like that. I wish I could say I like put a bunch into it and I like go into this mindset before, and I'm like I'm just being me, man. I just show up, and it probably comes from that. Honestly, we could talk about. I feel like we could spend a whole podcast just talking about that. Coaches we've had growing up, and things we've taken from them. But man, unfortunately, in regards to male figures in my life through matriculation and just growing older, unfortunately, a lot of them have been negative. Not a lot of them have been very positive. I feel like I've almost learned more from men what not to do than what to do. And it's sad, but when you cross paths with a guy like that, who you can learn from, who does command respect, but isn't fake about it, and it can still keep things light, it's a very rare thing, you know? So, yeah, it's a huge compliment. I'm going to cry.
Yeah, this early on. No, but it reminds me of a coach that I had at VCU my 5th year, and Coach Foltz, and I noticed it very early on. And this is not shaded at other coaches. It's more of just to bolster you, I guess, because something about the way that he operated was just, everybody respected the fuck out of him. Like it didn't matter where you were coming from, what you were doing. It didn't matter if you weren't a pitcher, if you were a hitter, you respected Coach Foltz. But he also was able to chop it up with you and make you laugh and make you feel heard and make you feel like he understood and was building rapport with you.
Still one of the boys.
Exactly. But it's such a difficult thing to do, because so often it's easy to get on one side where you could be like sort of anal authoritative, and you go to a class and it's kind of like, okay, well, fuck, I don't really want to talk to Dallas after class because, like, oh shit, I'm scared of him.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And in martial arts maybe might even like multiply that, just because it is can be viewed as aggressive, or it is a combat sport. So I think with martial arts, it might be it might be tough. That might be really easy to blur, like whether or not. Yeah, just how to navigate that. I don't know. I haven't really even had a lot of experience myself. I didn't grow up doing martial arts. I've really only spent majority of my time at 10th Planet Austin, as far as where I'm gaining knowledge from. I've been around and spent time at other gyms, but here and there. But yeah, I don't have like some like vast experience with it either. So yeah, that can be tough. Yeah.
You kind of touched on it just now, and I'm curious to learn. Interesting to hear you say that, because I would have just assumed that you've been doing Muay Thai or whatever your whole life. So you want to get into usually how I start most podcasts is trying to just get a better understanding of who you are and how you got to where you are from where you were being wherever, however far back you want to start.
Man, well, the martial arts journey started when I was 18. So nothing prior to that. I actually was the opposite. Like growing up, I just played ball sports, football, basketball, whatever the season was when I was younger. As I got a little older, especially nowadays, you start picking one path. I stuck with basketball. That's what I was best at, and it's what I thought was the most fun. So that's what I focused a lot of my attention on. As far as martial arts go, I probably made fun of martial arts kids more than anything growing up. Like all my friends that did it, I would just like make fun of them for it. I'd be like, dude, I could beat you up. You do taekwondo, like, weak. So it's really funny that they all have like serious jobs now, and I'm the one who teaches martial arts. Yeah. Who's that? So yeah, journey didn't start till I was 18. I had a really bad knee injury coming out of my senior year of high school. We lost in the playoffs, and I was in the mindset of I want to play college ball. We didn't have money to afford college, so it was one of those things where I needed to get a scholarship, and I had the skill set to at least do that. And there's so many different levels: D1, D2, D3. You know yourself better than junior college, all that. So I was confident there'd be some sort of path. And anytime I do anything in life, I want to be the best at it. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be able to go to some high major school. I'm not some big ranked guy. Maybe I'll go junior college path. And then that was kind of my goal. And I ended up like hurting my knee at the end of the year. And it was a pretty bad knee injury. I tore my MCL, and I found out that that my femur was also cracked. So I had to get this like reconstructive surgery in my knee, non-weight bearing. And so I just spent a lot of time alone during that time. All my friends are partying, getting ready for college. I didn't have any idea where I was going to go or what I was going to do. And I think these are those like times where people kind of fall into like depressions and stuff, just whatever that means. But I didn't. I actually really found myself like enjoying the alone time. And I started like, rather than worrying about my parents or friends or anything that was going on, like all the external stuff, I just really looked in, and I started to find out a lot more about Dallas, about who I am and what makes me happy and the kind of man I want to be. And it was really like the catalyst that like switched my mindset and really like made me who I am today. And through that time, I was like, I want to do something. Like, I know I'm not gonna play basketball anymore, but I want to get involved in something, stay healthy. And martial arts was calling my name. I had heard of jiu-jitsu, so I started training some jiu-jitsu at just like a school that was like closest to me. Did that for a little bit, and then you just have that pressure of life and parents and people in my ear. I was like, okay, no, I should go back to school. So I just went to like community college. Out in College Station, and I'm out there partying with friends, and just really wasn't my vibe. It's not really what I wanted to do. It didn't feel good about myself. I still didn't have direction. And not that you need to have it all figured out at 18, 19, but I'm somebody who likes it. I want to know like where I'm headed.
Yeah.
And especially since I had that injury and had that time alone, I told you my mindset had switched. So it just wasn't fun for me, the partying and just kind of going through the motion of things. So I moved back to Austin, and when I moved back here, I wanted to get in a strength conditioning program, and I did that at On It. And at that time, they had just added 10th Planet Austin. So I started doing jiu-jitsu there, just kind of fell in my lap. From there, I met Andrew Craig, who is my head coach and one of my best friends, UFC vet. Then I thought, okay, here's a guy who I can like resonate with. He's in the UFC. He was still in the UFC at the time. I said, okay, this is doable. I started picking his brain, asking him questions, and then just doing what he said. And then the rest I feel like is almost kind of boring, because then that just compounds over time. I just really bought in and doubled down, and my goals became more clear, and I became more confident, through my hard work and through training. And yeah, long story short, that's kind of how I am here now. Very
interesting to hear that you had the injury that caused you to reflect, because growing up an athlete, you have athletic friends, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Your whole life, or at least my whole life, I was so wrapped up in my athletic identity. Yeah. So I like I mentioned, I played in college and wanted to play pro, and it was like I had told myself literally like on a daily basis, I'm already an MLB player. I just haven't pitched in the MLB yet.
Yeah.
It's like that's how ingrained it was in me. And it wasn't until I separated from baseball that happened to me. That was after college for me, but the connection that I'm drawing is between my best friend Ian Seymour, who on episode 5 of this podcast talks about that in depth, where he was a second round pick, highly touted, very, very good baseball player.
He got there,
yeah. Yeah, still very good, but he was in the minors, and he was doing really well towards UCL. And he said upon that happening, he had never it's just that the injury can sometimes be the catalyst for the separation between what we identify as currently and what we actually want to do with our lives. And so sometimes you need, like, in hindsight, you're probably glad you got that injury. I don't know.
Oh yeah, at this point for sure. Yeah.
Because it allowed you to sort of, I mean, it's also very cool to hear you say that you went in and you enjoyed it, because that's another thing I think people don't do, perhaps because of just the way we're constantly stimulated and distracted, and the amount of ways that we can distract ourselves now with partying and drugs and video games and endless consumption of media and whatnot.
Yeah.
When you had that injury, it gave you the space to be like, okay, well, who is Dallas? And you're like, I don't even know, so let's find out. And you realize that you kind of like what you found out about yourself, and then it puts you on this path. So I think that's so cool. I think it's a commonality between a lot of people, especially people that change their path. Like you were a basketball player, injury, then you're like, wait, there's more than basketball. And I also don't think it's a coincidence that you found martial arts to be so gravitating, because that's the same experience I had. Jiu-jitsu filled that gap for me. Like, yeah. And I haven't been, like, my goal is not the same as yours, but I upon finding jiu-jitsu, it was the exact same amount of effort, like 5-6 times a week, every week for 9 months straight until I moved. And it's the martial arts journey. I want to dive into yours specifically, but it's fascinating. I mean, now you're fighting, like, and I'll bring this up now. After one of your fights in Peak, I believe, mm-hmm. I watched it on YouTube, and after you won via TKO or something like that, you were asked, like, describe your performance, and you mentioned something along the lines of, this is what I've dedicated my life to.
Yeah.
And so I want to kind of get into it and hear you kind of explain that to, like, from your perspective, what compelled you to answer that with such conviction that this is what you're dedicating your life to, this being martial arts?
Well, I mean, on paper, I quite literally have dedicated my life to it. I didn't go to college. I don't have some crazy business resume where I can go get a good job that can take care of my future family. I don't have any of that. So I literally have sacrificed those paths right off the bat. I mean, you can always go back to school. It's never too late to do things. Don't get me wrong. I've heard of people becoming doctors in their 40s. Mm-hmm. So I'm not like that closed off, but I quite literally on paper have sacrificed my youth as well. Partying, friends I've grown up with, people that are good people. I lose connection with. I miss birthdays. I miss Christmases. So I quite literally have sacrificed my whole youth for this, and so I take it that serious. I don't regret it at all, but being broke, missing out on things, all for this goal that isn't guaranteed, that nobody else is gonna understand. It can be tough, but I wouldn't do it any other way. I'm not sad about it. I don't regret it at all. And so in those moments, after a win, it's like the highest of high. You've never felt anything like it in your life. Winning basketball games, winning baseball games is cool, and it's a close feeling, but to be throwing your body and, like, using your physical limbs to, like, hurt someone else, and it's just a trippy thing. It's a trippy thing, and I don't really know how to explain it, and I might be able to explain it better depending on the day, but in those moments, yeah, there's just this, like, ultimate feeling of gratitude, like, immediately there in the cage, like, when it's just you in the back with the friends and everything is different with your coaches, because it's all about you all sacrifice your own time for that moment, but that's those few seconds in the cage, like, right after the win, it is just this, like, blissful, like, overwhelming feeling of gratitude where yeah, it's just nirvana. Yeah. It's great. Yeah, so when I said that, I did mean it. Yeah, I've sacrificed a lot for it.
I just thought it struck me, it wasn't like something you thought about a lot. No. Like, he literally asked the question, describe your performance, and you didn't really even get into your performance. You got to the fact that you had dedicated your life to this, how seriously you take it. You mentioned your coaches, your girlfriend, your team, and your circle. You said something along the lines of, it's tight and nobody's getting in or out.
Nobody gets in, nobody gets out, yeah.
Which I don't think it's a coincidence that the thing that you're thinking of immediately, because you could have gone like, I'm the greatest, I'm blah, 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 like, look, I'm so good.
Yeah.
You thought about the people that helped you get there and the decision that you made that was more or less to burn the boats. And I'm reminded by two things. One, I had the opportunity of speaking to Bo Waters, who is a former professional athlete in Australia for Aussie Rules football. It's like the NFL of football. Yeah. A wholesale name in that sport, like somebody that if you're in Australia, especially in Perth or the West Coast, you know who Bo Waters is. Yeah. He won several awards, won the grand finals as a part of a team. But I asked him that almost that same question that you just answered is, how did you balance that work-life balance? Like, how'd you do that? And he answered something that I'd never heard before. He said, I'd never made a sacrifice. I made choices. Yeah. And I don't regret any of them, because at that current time in my life, being the best professional athlete that I could be, in your case, whatever your goal is, to become the best MMA fighter that you possibly can be, that requires you to make choices that eliminate. Decisiveness means to kill off. So your decision to do that kills off so many other possibilities. Yeah. You're more or less burning the boats, which takes a lot of courage, and I absolutely applaud you for that. I think it's very, very cool.
Yeah, I think sacrifice is like the word that gets thrown around a lot, and I've even used it myself. But I like that. I like that kind of outlook better, because it's really not like a big deal to me. I didn't even bat an eye at it. I wouldn't change a thing. I could really care less. I think a lot of people lie about who they are as a person, and I know me. I'm selfish. I'm a very selfish person, and that'll never change. I'm also the first person that I would take a shirt off my back for a friend who would need it. So I don't necessarily mean it in the most negative way, but I'm also not gonna lie. I'm gonna put myself first, because that's really the only way I feel like I can help those around me. I can set the next generation up. I can set my kids up, my future family down the road, is by being selfish right now. So in my mind, it's like really the least selfish thing.
No, I'm reminded again by a comment that Zach Shankin told me it's like his pinned tweet or something. I don't know if he didn't say it, somebody else said it, but to say I love you, one must first know the I. So if you say I love you, but who is I, right? Like what is I? So in that way, I agree with you. I think we are all selfish beings. I actually had this thought recently about, even in the most altruistic way, say I want to be a doctor and go work in a third world country and help people. The root of that reason, like you could say, oh, it's to help people. The bottom of that barrel is because it's going to make me feel good about my life. Yeah. And so it's the exact same, man. It's like, you have to take care of you. I have to take care of me. Yeah. I have to take care of I before I can love somebody or give the shirt off my back. And so I think that's profound. Another thing that Zach talks about, which is funny, the correlations between like his podcast and his message and mine. Have you heard the Man in the Arena quote?
Yes.
Yeah. So your description of the euphoria that you feel in the ring, that's immediately what I went to, because I'm like, you lose, you at least know what it's like to put yourself on a stage that 99.99999% of people in today's world would never put themselves on, because of the possibility of losing.
Yeah, I've only lost once in my MMA career, and I was talking a lot of trash leading up to it, and that'll never change. That's just who I am. I'm going to call it how I see it. And I remember, I don't know who he was, some hillbilly kid's uncle or something. He was like, "That's what you get for talking smack, boy." And I just remember, like, it didn't bother me one bit. I was like, "That's why you're in the stands, pussy." I was like, I'm the one doing it.
Yeah.
So it's just so funny. The Man in the Arena quote is a great quote, and it rings true with fighters. It works. So many great men, so many smart men who've lived this life before us have said so many amazing things, and the cliches work, and I think it's important to check in with those. It sounds like you've talked to a lot of accomplished men as it is. I feel grateful for even being on this podcast. I'm sure, like, I don't even stack up to them at all, but
well, I mean, I would argue otherwise, man. It's like we talked about the podcast, having a podcast, and this is something that I take very seriously. It's not like, just like you've mentioned, how seriously you take your goal as an MMA fighter. This is not something like the worst feeling that I can imagine today, for example, like I came here early, I made sure everything was set up because it's the first time using the studio.
Okay.
If we had this podcast and somehow the value was not provided for you, or something went wrong and I was acting in an unprofessional way, or like wasn't taking you seriously in the fact that you're taking time out of your Sunday afternoon to come speak with me, that's not how I operate. That's not how I live. And I think that has allowed me and will continue to allow me, hopefully, to converse with people like that. And I want to bolster you up again. I do think that you're on that stage, man. Like, I've talked to a lot of people, like doctors, professional athletes, and you mentioned it. Winning a baseball game is fun.
Yeah.
The biggest baseball game I ever won was a UNC regional game against UNC at UNC, 4,000 people. I got the save last inning.
Yeah.
Most euphoric moment I ever had. The second most euphoric, gratitude-filled moment was when I won the first and only jiu-jitsu competition I'd ever been in.
Wow.
I like immediately upon like getting my hand raised, I was like, holy shit, this is what that felt like. I remember that.
Yeah, it wasn't some planned thing. It's just this like flood of like, it's hard to explain, but
yeah.
It's cool that the second time you experienced it was through jiu-jitsu.
And it was like a rinky-dink. It wasn't like a playoff game. It was just like a little regular competition.
4,000 people.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, if the reason I bring that up is like the economies of scale. Like you mentioned it. MMA fighting is, there's tiers, there's combat, there's actual war, which is what you said it before we got on. Like, people are innately kind of fascinated with and innately fans of fighting. Yeah. It's the way we are.
I mean, we come from that, you know what I mean? Lands were conquered, kingdoms were built off of ravaging and destroying another man and his people, you know what I mean? We're soft compared to those times, thank God. I wouldn't want to be born in another time. Yeah. But that's inside all of us, make no mistake. That's why we are here. So I think that's why it's innate and why it rings so true with people.
Yeah, and the risk that you're putting up, like the risk that you're incurring going into a ring with another man that's trying to literally beat you until you're unconscious, is more than just about any other activity that a man can do it other than actual war.
Exactly.
Because your head, your brain, your health, your physical well-being is legitimately at stake. Like, to continue with the baseball analogy, if I give up a home run and I lose a game, okay, cool, I give up a home run. Like,
in the moment, dang, you feel bad for your teammates, but you're fine.
You lose a fight. I have a buddy, Vance, who is an MMA fighter out of Vegas. He's been on here twice, actually, and he talks about one of the moments that changed his life was losing a fight, like, really badly, and the impact it had on his health, like, really channeled some energy into different avenues, because he was like, wait a second, like, this is how serious this is. This is not no, like, oh, if I lose, like, what if you lose in MMA, like, you're gonna be damaged. Like, that's part of, even if you win, really. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm just fascinated by the fact that you even, especially late in life, like, I feel like a lot of fighters, it's something that they were doing jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai at like a young age, or taekwondo.
That's interesting too, and that's like another topic, man. Like, think about the kids that you grew up playing baseball with. The best guy was not the best guy when it was all said and done. They get burned out. They're doing it. Oh, your dad's making you do it. Oh, okay, now it makes sense. So the kids that are doing martial art, it is a little bit different now. Like, I will say, even though fighting's been around a long time, it's just now getting like integrated into like starting as a kid and doing it your whole life. So there's not a lot of people that are probably doing it high level that have been doing it their whole life. I feel like it's just now getting to the point now where kids are doing it at a young age. But it's like, what are you doing it for? You know, were you forced to do it? Do you even love it? You know, kids get burned out. I'm actually glad I got into it later. I wasn't jaded by some coach when I was younger. I did it because I wanted to do it. Nobody pushed me. It was really just a calling. So I think everybody's path is different. And fighting there's no wrong way to do it either. You know what I mean? You're going to have your foundation, like anything. You're going to have your fundamentals, but it is the most free thing you can do. There's no wrong way. You can go out there and, I mean, like Anthony Pettis, jump off the cage, kick someone in the face. Like, there's really, like, minus a few things you can't do, there's no wrong way. So it's really beautiful just for that.
Martial art.
Yeah.
It isn't. I believe martial means war. So, like, it's the art of war. It's the art of of putting yourself out there. And I totally like the thing that immediately came to mind when you just mentioned that is the different styles. Like somebody can have a completely different style in the exact same sport than somebody else, and then they go at it and they just see like kind of like the impetus of the UFC, which like you have these back when MMA was more like the jiu-jitsu guys would go against the boxing guys and all that stuff. Even that, it's like my art versus yours. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And I've always been fascinated by the, like you mentioned you were talking shit before you fight, which is like people that
I always do that.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people like, especially old heads, will be like, oh, like he needs to just shut his mouth. Right, you're about to go literally fight somebody.
It's the most hypocritical thing, man. I've had so many people like, you know, have this distaste for me talking smack. But you know what's funny? What I've noticed is the world's filled with hypocrites. And so here I am talking smack, and they go off and do the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, don't be fake. What are you saying behind closed doors? Speak up. Speak your truth. I think a lot of people don't talk trash because they're scared of what will happen. It's like, so it's all just it's BS. You know what I mean? It is funny. Like I'm about to wrap my shin bone around your neck, but I can't say I think you're slow or something. Like, why is it really that bad?
Yeah.
And also, if it's upsetting you, then what I'm doing is winning. You know, it's working. So the goal is don't get caught up in that. And just don't get caught up in that yourself. Yeah.
To go back to the man in the arena quote, the beginning of it, I don't know for verbatim, but it is not the man outside the arena whose opinion counts. And what I've even noticed is obviously there's exceptions where it gets really personal, where people take it personally. But what I've found fascinating about martial arts is, and I don't know about your specific fight that you lost, that you mentioned that you were talking shit leading up to, but even in like the UFC or other big fight organizations, people talk shit, and then when they fight, it's nothing but respect afterwards. It's like, okay, well, look, we were doing all this stuff up to, it is a business as well. You want to get views, you want to build hype.
Of course, at that level,
Yeah, exactly. But at the end of the day, it's two men or women going into a ring, and the literal, the realist sense, putting their money where their mouth is. Like, you're talking shit. Okay, well, it's going to come to fruition at one point, and like you mentioned, it's going to be my shin wrapping around your neck. So like, if I can't say that I think you're slow or that you're a bitch, like, I'm going to kick you in the head. So like, what's it matter?
That's really honestly, like, just to kind of compile all that's really what I probably love most about my life and about this journey is you can say whatever you want, you can do whatever you want, but no matter what, like you said, it's the I. And I know who I am, and I know that I have to prove that to myself. I have to prove that I am who I say I am. I've heard somebody say that before. I can't remember who, or I would quote them. But that's kind of how I would sum it up in one sentence. I fight because I want to prove to myself that I am who I say I am. And I want to do that time and time again.
And what better way to do it than an actual fight?
Yeah.
One of my buddies, and I keep alluding to people, but this was, I tweeted this as well. This is leading up to that point in the podcast. It was the most profound 1.5-minute clip I'd ever, I tweeted that if my entire podcasting journey up to that point, which was last week, was to bring that clip to fruition, I would consider it worth it, because I asked Case Bradford what he's fighting for. And I want to ask you that later in the podcast as well. But without even really blinking an eye, he said it's a war within. Like, I'm fighting a fight against the person that I don't want to be, the person that's lazy, weak, a liar, that's all these things that are negative to the world. And I'm like actively trying to kill that part of me. And so in that, you're learning who you are. And you mentioned something that you know who you are and that you're continually, I don't believe that you like reach this pinnacle, maybe enlightenment. Yeah.
Right.
It's not like, oh, I know who I am for the rest of my life. That's kind of what I want to ask you on that is, number one, how have you gotten to know who you are now, and how through fighting do you continually learn about who you are?
How do I know who I am?
Yeah, like how,
I
like
think
what's
it started? I think I would go back to the injury. It started just isolation is when it started, and with isolation comes reflection, And with reflection for me came a lot of anger. It came a lot of resentment. And really just this this confusion of why I had to grow up the way I had to grow up. The people I was surrounded by, the environment that I was put in was very negative. It was very hostile, hectic, visceral, and it was the worst time of my life, and it was very sad. It was unfortunate that I had to deal with some of the stuff I had to deal with as a kid, and with that reflection, I realized it wasn't my fault. You don't get to pick the families that you're born into and the situations that you're going to grow up into, and you also realize that people have it way worse, man. Yeah. People have it way worse. And so from there, built this mindset of, okay, there's no excuse. I get a clean slate. I don't need to be attached to this. I'm my own person, and what do I want to do? What do I want to do? And I want to step into a position of power, and all that means for me is like power within is just confidence, and that's going to come from experiences and putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. And that was kind of how it all started for me.
Yeah, and I've never really thought about it this way, but what you just mentioned, there in admitting that there are things that you can't control, or that, let me put that another way to not like say you.
Yeah.
In admitting that there are things that we cannot control,
yeah.
In that admittance, we are admitting that there are things that we can.
Yeah, exactly.
And so for you, it sounds like you had this isolation and this solitude, which is another like thing that I think is so important that I bet you a lot of people are afraid of. But for you, for example, it sounds like you're grateful for it, and I'm grateful for the solitude that I've been able to have, even though it can be scary sometimes. But the solitude allows you to take a step back and really dive into, okay, who am I blaming? What am I resentful of? What am I angry at? And then you say, okay, well, what of that did I have control over, or can I control? Okay, X, Y, and Z. What do I have control over to change those things?
And so it really is that simple. It really is that simple. We can make things like harder than we want to. And there's even times now where I have to remind myself, what was Dallas? What was his mindset like 10 years ago? Because sometimes I feel like he knew it better than I know now. Mm-hmm. And you gotta take a step back and recognize that it really is that simple.
Yeah. And the reframe as well, like, dude, we're sitting here in Austin, Texas. We both have shelter, food, clothes, water.
Yeah.
Bro, there's people in this world, and this is something I need to remind myself of way more often, that my buddy said this the other day. There are people that would legitimately kill.
Oh, yeah.
They would consider every single prayer they've ever asked or prayed answered if they were in my shoes. And I'm sitting here complaining about X, Y, or Z.
Still take it for granted.
Yeah, and I don't think I think that's a feature of being human. I don't think it's a bug. That's something we just have this innate sort of wondering about, oh, what could this be? What could that be? Blah, blah, blah. But when you really sit back and think about it, there are people in this world that would kill to be in my position or your position or anybody's list. Dude, if you can listen to this, it means you have a phone.
Exactly. Just the audience alone. Yeah, I don't spend too much time trying to think about that, because you really can almost like feel bad. And I don't ever want to feel bad for anyone. It's not a good mindset to be in. It's one thing to have compassion, you know what I mean? But to sit here and feel bad, I don't understand why. I don't know why I don't know what you believe in. I don't know why my soul picked this body. I don't know. Yeah, it's all very interesting why we end up where we end up. And it's kind of one of those things that drives a lot of people crazy, you know what I mean? As far as like what they believe in and who's God and what happens when we die and why did all this. It's like that's all kind of like big picture stuff that I'm not in a place to even try to drive myself crazy, trying to understand. But I know the best thing I could do for those who wish they had my life or whatever it is, just make the most of it. Yeah, that's all I can. That's probably like the best thing I can do is just make the most of it.
The most severe form of taking it for granted, it being this life that we're gifted, and that I would consider life to be a gift, a beautiful gift, and in that beauty there are struggles and beasts. But the most severe form of taking that for granted would be to not live it to the fullest, and to not keep going back to it, to not put yourself in the arena, to be the voice on the outside saying, you're a pussy, like, yeah, you want, even if it's not the arena that you're talking shit about, get in a arena.
Yeah.
Like, go do something. Go decide, like you did, about a particular thing that you're going to devote your life to because you feel compelled to for X, Y, and Z reason. I don't know the reasons. But yeah, I mean, what a powerful reframe that you just brought up, man. Like, it could be so much worse.
Yeah.
It could be so much worse.
It could be so much worse.
And you mentioned a little bit, I don't know much about your background, frankly, but if you want to get into like any of the things that you were angry about, or if you don't want to get into those.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm an open book, man. Like, I'm somebody who's very honest. I have nothing to hide. I'll you know, I might be able to give you a better answer on certain days and go more in depth. And as far as like things I was angry about as a kid, I mean, I think just adults' inability to deal with life, this energy of inadequacy and the way they move around and how they take that out on children is just, I don't understand it. I don't understand it at all. And I was caught up in the middle of that as a child. And like I said, was in a very like emotionally and physically abusive household that you know, will cook up anger in a way that only if you've been through it can you imagine. Feeling sorry for yourself. You know, why does my dad talk like this? Why does he do this? Why does he treat us this way? Yeah, I mean, as far as like specifics, don't necessarily like. I can't think of any. Like,
well, no, yeah, you don't need to get into
all the above, man. Yeah. But yeah, I kind of forgot what your question was. I kind of blacked out thinking about it.
More or less, just like, well, you kind of answered it. Like, what is it that made you angry?
Yeah.
And then also, does that drive you towards who you want to become? Like today?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I don't even know if it was recording, but like I said, most of the males I've interacted with in my life, and it is depressing, they're inadequate. And because of that, I've learned a lot what not to do. And so, yeah, through that, it galvanized me into this positive mind frame, you know, the opposite, to not be that way. And I think about that all the time, and it scares me sometimes to potentially end up like that. And I'm not perfect. There's times where I might explode emotionally, you know, in private. I might cry or whatever it is. Not that that's a bad thing, but there's times where I fear that could happen to me. And Star Wars actually has a great quote. I love Star Wars, man. And Yoda talked about how fear leads to anger, and anger leads to hate, and hate leads to the dark side, where in this sense, I guess the dark side for me would be inadequacy and ending up like so many other sad, lonely, depressed, angry men.
That's, well, first off, Yoda is a legend.
Legend. He's like 800 years old. So he's got a lot of life experience.
Dude, yeah, exactly. If anybody could speak on it, it'd be him. Yeah. He's lived enough lifetimes for us all. The idea that are you familiar with the rat or the mouse in the tunnel study?
No.
So I'm gonna botch this and forgive me.
Yeah, let's see.
My understanding is that the people did this study. They put a rat in a cage, and they attached a spring to its tail, or not in a cage, in a tunnel. Okay. Attach a spring to its tail to the end of the tunnel. Then they could measure how much force it was putting in the direction that it was going.
Okay.
And so they did two things. The first thing they did was they put a piece of cheese or a smell of cheese and wafted it towards the front of the tunnel where he was facing.
So he'd take off.
He took off, right? And they measured that force that he was.
Yeah.
And then what they did, I don't know what the predator was. They wafted in the smell of a cat or some predatory animal from the back. Which one do you think he pushed harder to go forward?
Yeah, fear.
Fear. Yeah. The rat exuded more effort and put in more energy because he was afraid of the thing behind him. And the point that I think that brings up, that's a lot of people run from things they don't even know about towards things they don't even know about. Yeah. But when you can face, for example, like the isolation that allowed you to do this, you can like actually literally turn your orientation, face the shit that you're angry about, face the shit that you recognize makes you resentful or mad at the world or people, whoever it is. If you can face that, understand it, and then also use that to run. So basically, my point is, I believe that we are best suited to become the best versions of ourselves, the highest forms of ourselves that the world needs and that we need to become when we are running towards that vision and away from the thing that we're running from. And this is actually funny. I'll just share this because I wrote a little poem last night. The man that I'm afraid of is a man that I've been. The thing that really scares me is being that man again. A man that's lost in devil's scheme, a man that's lost in sin. What gives me solace is belief and faith that God will win. And so I've probably said that like 10 times in the last hour or 2 hours just thinking about it.
What a great mantra.
Yeah, so the point behind that and how it relates to this, I think, is there is a man that like I'm afraid of, and I'm speaking from, I don't know for you personally, like there's a man that I'm afraid of becoming, and it's similar to the one you're talking about, inadequate, depressed, woe is me, incompetent, taking out anger and my shortcomings on other people. And there's also a man that I'm running towards, like that I have this vision of myself as a man where I'm strong, virtuous, graceful, loving, honest, all these things, compassionate. I'm running towards that person, but I'm also running the fuck away from that guy because I don't want that guy to catch up, right? So I think it's an interesting dichotomy to be operated within.
I think, man, if there's like one message that could be taken from our podcast, our conversation, I would probably say it'd be just that. Like I said, most men and most males out there right now all of them are dealing with that. We all are, and a lot of people fail. A lot of people end up losing and becoming that person that they feared. You don't want to give fear too much power, but it's real. It doesn't take a lot to slip. It doesn't take a lot to become that person. I could get in a car wreck going home right now, be paralyzed, and let's see if you still want to keep a positive mind frame. See how easy it is. And I'm aware of that. So it's interesting, and it's as beautiful as it all is. It's really sad because you see a lot of guys that don't see it that way or that lose that vision or never even had it.
That's a good point. People, I never even really thought about that. The men that have the vision don't get there, but how it may be or what the circumstances were that created a man that never even had a vision. That's a pretty sad thing to think about.
Yeah, I feel that case with my dad. I feel like he went through the same thing times 10, had an abusive father. Then he had kids at a young age and maybe wanted to be a different person, but then has to take care of these kids, has to go work for the man, has to go 20, 30 years flies by. You never did anything for yourself. And so you're angry about that. And I get it, but still no excuse to the lack of emotional intelligence and just the wherewithal to get through that.
Yeah. Pull this a little closer because on some of those it's getting a little...
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing that, and it's interesting, there's obviously levels to all of it. I find myself judging my dad more harshly than I think I ought to because the reality of it is I didn't come from an abusive household. I love my dad. He's in many ways a better man than me. That's awesome. But for some reason, the things that I think about more than those are the things that I wish that he was or wish that he taught me or wish that he did.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently is I heard a quote once, growing up is realizing that your parents are growing up too. Because I still do sometimes, but I think about my parents, I'm like, oh, they should know.
Yeah.
Like, why don't they know X, Y, and Z? They're literally this old. They've done this, this, and this.
You just assume.
There's never a time where, like, I really don't believe there's never a time where any human being ever is going to reach a point where they're like, oh, I'm good. It's like my parents are still growing. They're still learning. They're still trying to unpack things that they dealt with as kids, just like your parents, just like you, just like me. And there's a fine line between, like, grace, like showing people grace, but there's also a fine line between that and taking care of yourself and like knowing what you gotta.
Accountability.
Yeah, exactly. You got grace and accountability. That's interesting. It's like, oh, I can show you grace right here, but dude, you need to step the fuck up.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
And I think I'm sure based off evolution, I'm sure each generation it gets easier. I wonder if they had conversations like this with their friends. I'm sure if they did, it would be easier to kind of step into that mind frame. So I'm very grateful for this. Just hopping on the podcast with you is almost therapeutic for myself too. But yeah, and I hope that is the case. I hope I am always learning. I don't ever want to get to a place where I think I've got it all figured out. That's when you die.
Yeah, exactly. There's that's sort of speaks on the entire premise of the podcast is like the Tyro, the eternal learner, the eternal novice, the eternal beginner, which I think that's why I felt called, or that the word found me, I guess. And I do want to get into a little bit of your fighting because, like I mentioned, I'm fascinated by it. I think it's like the more I'm actually like an odd case, I guess. I actually started jiu-jitsu. A lot of people, I think, get into jiu-jitsu or martial arts because they watch UFC or fighting. They're fans of it.
Exactly.
I was not a fan. I really didn't care. I started doing jiu-jitsu, and then the whole world opened up to me. I was like, oh my gosh, there's striking. Like there's Muay Thai, there's boxing, there's kickboxing. Yeah. Like what the hell? So, all that to say is I'm a fan, and I'm so curious because I've never stepped in a ring. Yeah. What would you say is like the biggest lesson that you've learned about life, about yourself from stepping in the ring? Like from the answer that, and then I'll get into like your fight history, I guess.
Once again, like with these questions, I feel like I could give you a different answer depending on the day, but you cannot run from the truth. You cannot run from the truth. In life, it is inevitable. When you're laying there on your deathbed, all the things you wish you would have said, you wish you would have done, I imagine, I've never died before, I imagine you get flooded with this inability to run from the truth and if I just would have, I should have, I could have, or I'm glad I did. Not always negative either. I'm so thankful for this, right? And when I walk in the cage, I always do the same thing. I'll grab the top as I enter in. When I touch the cage first, because I just want to feel it. I want to feel like, okay, this is real. I'm really right here. And whatever is about to happen, I'm going to let it go right now. I don't want to win. I don't want to lose. I don't want anything. I just want everything that I'm meant to take away from this to happen in these however long minutes, just a few minutes. And from a physical standpoint, you can't run from the truth and the fact that how hard did you train, right? So that as well, but just something bigger too, just the truth of all of it. It feels more real than anything I've ever felt. And it is just this ability to go into this like flow state that people call it. It happens without thought, and yeah, it's trippy, but yeah, I forgot the question exactly how you framed it, but
you answered the lesson that you've learned. I mean, that's
can't run from the truth. Yeah,
it's about as true as it gets. I mean, we talked about it. Like I talked to my jiu-jitsu coach who did a couple MMA fights, and he remembered, this is probably 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. His first MMA fight, he remembers the sound of the gate closing, because it was like here I am, this is real. That shit just closed, and it's not open until either I'm raising my hand up or I'm on the ground. So it's true.
I remember. So actually, the quote that you referenced for me, that was my first MMA fight.
No way. That was your debut?
That was my debut, and it was in Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Nice.
And there's about 30 people that are in there watching, and I remember I was sick. I was sick the whole week. I had the flu. It was terrible. I didn't tell anyone. The only person I knew was my girlfriend. She was sick as well. And I just didn't care because I thought, like, man, if I don't do this right now, I was like, it's never going to happen. I felt like I've already been waiting a while to get into it and do it. I made the walk, and I just remember just the gratitude I felt. That was all I really, really remember. I don't remember any noises. I don't remember anything big like that. I just remember just that feeling of gratitude. And that was when I knew I was like, yep, I'm doubling down. This is what I'm meant to do. This feels
just like that.
Yeah, this feels right.
There's when you get put in those situations, it's almost like you don't have a choice but the clarity is unparalleled. And as I've mentioned, like the only thing that I can draw from is my baseball experience, because that's I don't remember a single sound from my most high level performances, my most successful performances. Yeah. And I actually even found that on my bad performances, I do.
Yeah.
which means that I probably wasn't as clear, as focused, or as confident in whatever else I was doing. So I think that's interesting. You don't remember a sound. And I also think it's interesting that you were like, look, if this doesn't happen now, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Like there's to reference Vance again, he talks about if you want to get a man to change his life, schedule a fight for him in 8 weeks. He will change his life.
Yeah.
Because you have another man lined up ready to beat your ass. You're not going to be going around your day to day the same.
Well, what's cool, there's this MMA legend, BJ Penn, and he talked about, it's like, if I told you right now, or if I didn't even say anything, if we walked outside and some guy tried to like rob us right now, dude, even if I didn't jump in, like say I'm not even there, like you wouldn't even be scared. You would just handle it. You take it on as it happened. But if I said, hey, we're about to walk out here in an hour and there's gonna be a dude waiting out there to beat your ass, the nerves that you would feel, it's just this different kind of like, you have to sit on it, and that's like probably the most nerve-wracking part of all of it is 8 weeks out, okay, 6 weeks out, okay, we're a week out, we're 2 days out, it's okay, it's a few hours out. It's not even the fact like once you're in there that you're scared. It's just your mind. Just
wonder why that is. I've never thought about that, bro. It's like I wonder why it is that like, because it's like you said, as soon as the gate closes, like okay, well I'm here.
Yeah.
I wonder why the build up. That makes so much sense. It's like
just the what if.
More. Yeah, that's true.
Just the what if.
That's a good point.
What if with anything. I'm gonna go ask her for a number. What if she says no? It's like the what if with anything. It's when you feel your like butterflies in your stomach. Yeah.
That's crazy. Have you heard John Jones's perspective on butterflies?
About getting them to fly in formation.
Yeah.
That's an interesting man. I've never talked with John, and I know he's had his stuff like outside of the cage, but he is the greatest fighter of all time. And when you hear him speak about fighting, it's very interesting.
You would be a wise man to listen.
Yeah, exactly. But I like it. Yeah, he's all butterflies are. I can't remember the exact quote, but flying in formation. I think that's.
Yeah, he basically was the perspective shift was you think of butterflies in my stomach. He was like, hell yeah, I got butterflies in my stomach, and they're forming right now into an army that's going to help me, like that's going to propel me. They're good things, and I think that's a good reframe.
Me, I'll feel it in my stomach. Like I always feel it the most like the morning of. And it's just this feeling in your stomach, this knot like you've never felt before. I'll get like jittery. I'm like, ooh, I get this like yawning a bunch. I'm all like, feel like I'm like tweaking. I'm like, oh God damn, what is this feeling? It's weird. But I just remind myself, I'm like, this is just my body just getting ready to go. It just knows. And once again, I just try to fall back on gratitude and just like, man, like, thank you so much for getting ready to perform for me and do everything I needed to do. I just try to frame it that way.
Are you familiar with why we feel it in our stomachs?
Well, and I'm finding out more about this, like about how powerful our gut is and like how much it's like directly correlated with our emotions.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The Hippocrates said something about, who's the founder of Western medicine, more or less, said something about the all health stemming from the gut, essentially. But my understanding about the nerves, this could be wrong, but the way I understand it is that there's a nerve that actually goes down and wraps around our stomach I think it's called the vagus nerve or the vagus
nerve.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And that actually wraps around our stomach. So that's my understanding of it. That could be incorrect.
Yeah. But I've heard of the vagus nerve before.
Perhaps it's, I have no idea, but my intuition is saying maybe it's alluded to Vegas and how like when you're gambling, you get the risk. Like
you're funny, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd be interested to learn more about the physiological side of all of it. And once again, I'm sure everybody's kind of different. I've seen with teammates and stuff, and not even teammates, just being in the back with other people. Everyone's different. Everyone's different with how they handle that and how they respond to these emotions. I just try not to run from them.
Yeah.
I'd be like super honest with myself about it. And also too, at the end of the day, I try not to give anything too much power. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if I am nervous or scared or anything like that, that's just a part of me. Another part of me feels like I'm a gangster, that nobody can fuck with me, you know?
Yeah. It goes back to sort of like the thing, the common theme so far is there's parts of us that we're running from. Yeah, exactly. All of it is a dichotomy, and you just have to find that line between operating that chaos and that order and like walking that fine line. Some people lean towards more this way, but I think John Jones, for example, is that dude who's like, in terms of fighting, he is on that line. Like, he's a crazy motherfucker, but he's immensely controlled when it comes in the ring. Like, it's like this, and then it just comes to fruition in this artistic domination of other human beings.
People will say John's like a sociopath and stuff like that. That's a word that gets thrown around a lot. But my favorite thing about him as a fighter is his IQ. I think that's his best attribute, is his fight IQ. And so when you're looking at people who, you know, are the best in their field, it's important that you take notes. And if I could take anything from him, it's IQ.
That was actually kind of leads into my next question that I was curious. Do you have any fighters other than Andrew Craig who, like you mentioned, successful career in the UFC and is close to you? Do you have any other fighters that you? Yeah,
number one would be Andrew Craig, because obviously, I'm going to look up to him the most because he's put the most time into me. So I'm biased, you know what I mean? So I'm like, you made a good choice by taking me under your wing. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously he's done things in there that I love. The best thing about Andrew Craig is he's a fighter. He's a dog. You can't beat that guy. He's not the best at anything. He's just really good at everything. And he's just a fighter. He scraps. He has heart, you know. And so that's something that I'm very proud to have a homie like that around me and a coach in my corner. I know, like, when I'm in there, I know he's gonna be practical, and he's gonna be calm, and he's gonna keep it real. You know what I mean? And he's a fighter himself. So even at times where I might lack, I know he's got my back with that kind of stuff. So he's number one by a landslide. We talked about John Jones. I love John Jones for his IQ alone, very high level IQ and the best of all time. So you have to take notes from him. There's other fighters that, from a showmanship standpoint, that I look up to a lot, because the only reason I'm able to do this, the only reason there's a platform for any of this, is because it is an entertainment sport. Nobody would give a shit if that wasn't the case. We live in a time where everything's moved by money, and so you have to be aware of that. And so there's other guys I look up to. I see the way they handle business. Chael Sonnen, you know, Conor McGregor, Sean O'Malley, these guys. I love the way they market themselves. And, you know, I'm not those guys. We're all different. But I'm also not naive to, like you said earlier, we kind of talked about the martial arts, respect. Wrong. I'm sacrificing everything for this, and I plan on making a lot of money. And I know that I can do that. I know I'm marketable. I have the look. I speak well. And I'm not afraid to call it as it is. And then there are other fighters too where the complete opposite. I love how much they respect it, and that they don't care about any of that stuff too. So it's hard to just like name certain fighters. Man, Israel Adesanya is like a really popular one now.
He's a G.
He's a G. I really like how he wears his emotions on his sleeves, and he seems very genuine to me. And I think he sells for that reason, as great as he is. I'm not even talking about like technically like physical attributes or like specific things in the octagon, because you could take away from so many different people, many different things. I honestly didn't really watch a lot of fight film until this year. I started watching a lot more because I don't ever want to get too caught up in what anyone else is doing. I like to focus on what I'm doing.
That's a great answer. And just as in anything in life, like fighting has so many different components. There's the actual martial art component. Like, okay, you like the way this guy performs certain sequences, or you like this guy's takedown defense, or his takedown offense, or certain submissions, etc. How he or how he combines his different fight, his grappling and his striking. You can learn from that
big time. You
can learn from the IQ level, like John Jones. You can take things from that.
Yeah.
You can learn from Sean O'Malley, Conor McGregor, Chael Sonnen, who literally like these guys have talked themselves into millions and millions of dollars. Yeah. And the people that talk shit on Conor McGregor, I want to speak on this for a sec.
Yeah, let's do it.
UFC and fighting as a whole is big.
Mm-hmm.
It is a worldwide sport now, a multi-billion dollar industry because of people like them.
Yeah.
Because not as authentic or as pure as it is for people to say, like, be quiet, bow, and then fight. Yeah. That's not going to get eyeballs. It's not going to get money. That's not going to allow you to sacrifice your time and your life to be able to do that, because you need money, right?
Yeah.
So anybody talks shit on Conor McGregor and then watches fights, I don't get it.
There are individuals who have propelled all kind of different walks of life. Michael Jordan with basketball. These trailblazers, man, they're outliers, and I'm so grateful to live in the time to be able to experience these people, you know, and I take motivation from that. Haters are weird to me. Well, I will say I'm the biggest hater probably. I talk the most shit when it comes to fighters. Like I'm like the biggest hater. I'm like, these guys suck. But I'm also like the biggest fan too. So like once again, kind of like that dichotomy we talked about. So yeah, I don't understand it because without all these people, it's just so motivating to me. It's so
Well, the whole idea, I believe that the entire, like I try to explain this simply. I think existence exists on a dichotomy between order and chaos at the most basic level. Jordan Peterson gets into that a lot more eloquently than I could ever.
You could probably explain it way better.
Fuck, dude, I don't even want to be in the same sentence as him. But that's a dichotomy, and then every other thing up until that point, there's dichotomies on top of that and up top of that. So, for example, the way that fighters, what's the word? Control themselves or present themselves, that in and of itself is a dichotomy. So there's things about certain people that you like, their flashiness, their marketability, but then there's also things about Khabib or different people or Islam. It's literally just like, I smash you and then go in and fight.
Yeah, I think sometimes, I think sometimes like with those guys, they also use that too as like a fear tactic. You know what I mean? And they play the game too. They're also marketing and they're getting money. So it's like, I know what it is too. There's a lot of fake respect in martial arts. I'm not saying that those guys are, but just in general, there's a lot of like fake respect. Like I said, I've seen guys do the whole bow thing, not talk smack, and then they're in the back. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. Yeah. You peek behind the curtain, you're like, y'all are fake as fuck. So So me, I'm just gonna keep it real and say how I feel in that moment. Which
I think people, authenticity. I think we fool ourselves into thinking that we can like fake things. And Jordan Peterson talks about this as well. He's never seen somebody get away with something ever.
Yeah, no. The only reason any of it works is if you're genuine. Khabib and Islam are only famous because they're genuine. If they were fake, they wouldn't even be in this situation. Conor McGregor, oh, he's fake. He's this. I don't think so. I don't think he would be at this level if he wasn't genuine. And everyone's different, but yeah, that's actually like something I think about a lot, is just making sure like that I'm being the most genuine person as possible, because it's the only way you're ever going to become who you want to become. Yeah, you're not going to get anywhere by faking it. You can fake it till you make it, but
there's a threshold.
There's a threshold, yeah.
And just from like an actual business standpoint, like especially with the amount of notoriety that people get, especially at high levels of sport nowadays, it's like you literally just can't. Like it's just not going to happen where you fake people out until they one day realize, oh wait, this guy actually is a scumbag or something, or this guy actually does this and he's just doing that. Which is interesting, like not to get too into the weeds, but like the Colby Covington guy, to hear like some of the stories about him, it's interesting.
Well, it's like a guy like him, these guys like Henry Cejudo, I mean, they are great fighters. They do have accolades. They have a leg to stand on. But for some reason they don't hit with the fans. The fans don't like them because they just feel that they're not genuine. And I don't even know those guys. That could be really how they are, but yeah,
it is a feel.
Yeah, it's just a feel. People know.
Have you ever watched John Jones' interview with Daniel Cormier, where Cormier's like, I wish they let me in the other room. So
hey, pussy, you still there? That's the best one. Me and my friend, every time we call each other, like he'll answer the phone. Hey, pussy, you still there?
Yeah. You're the worst, John. John, you're
so fake. He said, I wish they would let me in there. He said, I would absolutely kill you if you ever did anything like that.
Bro, that's what I was gonna say though. It's like, to me, and I have no disrespect towards DC. I think he's like a good announcer. I think he's actually like I enjoyed watching a lot of his fights in terms of like the highlights. I never watched one live, but to me, just the authenticity with which John answered, he was like, DC, I would literally kill you. Like,
yeah, he's serious.
And that's the thing. It's like nobody said, oh, John Jones just being funny. It's like John Jones is that type of motherfucker that would actually kill somebody. Have you seen the video of somebody breaking into his house?
Yeah. Yeah, but he like didn't hurt him either. He's being cool, but
runs after him with a shotgun.
He's like, so I don't think he's like a crazy guy.
No, the reason I bring that up is because like in that instance or that build up, like the videos I've seen, I just get this feeling that DC was kind of trying to be like put this face on, and John Jones was just like, I know who I am. I know I will. Like if it came down to it, I would actually kill you, and here's who I am, and it's gonna be put into the world.
As far as like fighters, I'm gonna have, like I said, I'm the biggest hater, but also like gonna have the most respect for these guys because they get in, and I know what it is they're going through emotionally and physically. So I have more respect for them than most people. But if we were to sit down and overanalyze every single person, regardless of a fighter or not, like, you're gonna find negative things. You're gonna find things that are dislikable, and that's just all of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I try not to get too caught up in that. With that myself, and as I get closer to my goals and these people that I once look up to or still do, or or in the shoes that I want to get to, as I get closer, I'm becoming more desensitized to it all, and just really focusing on me as an individual and my journey, and not really let anything jade that or sway that in any kind of way.
Yeah, you mentioned that we have so much output nowadays.
Yeah.
I think it was I believe this to be true. I wasn't alive back in the day, like hundreds of years ago when there wasn't social media, internet, et cetera. We had lived in tribes, a lot smaller amount of input that we can take in. Nowadays, we have billions and trillions of little bits of input we can take in from billions of people. So there's you mentioned it, like not getting involved with that, so that not watching film, for example, like you want to be doing what you're doing, not like, oh, I wish I could do what John Jones does. It's like, well, Dallas isn't John Jones. Nolan's not X, Y, and Z podcaster. So it's you want to learn from people, but dichotomy. You also want to make sure you're not trying to mimic them to the point that you're not being true to who you are or who you are as a martial artist.
Lose yourself, yeah.
Yeah, which is a dangerous road to go.
And once again, I think it's like we talked about, kind of the overarching thing with this whole thing, as far as like that inadequacy that I see in men. It's so easy for guys to like see someone who's not like that, a male that they look up to, and they want to follow that path and obtain some of those attributes in a positive way. And I think they should, and I think that's great. But once again, you still got to have that individualism, or it won't ring true, it won't hold,
Yeah, it's like a fine line between learning and copying.
Yeah.
It's like you don't want to copy, but you certainly you'd be a fool not to learn, but you would be inauthentic to copy.
Yeah.
So it's like a weird, it's very, I mean, I'm not sitting here saying like, oh, I'm this guy. Like, dude, I fucking copy shit from other podcasts all the time.
Yeah, no, and as you should. There are going to be things that you should take away from people. I mean, look at Kobe. He was like a lot like Michael, but different.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that. He still did it his own way. He was still his own person, but took a lot from him. So
the other thing about Kobe that you mentioned, and this kind of harkens back to what you're talking about, is he was like open, but he's like, oh, dude, I saw Mike do this move. I studied the whole summer how to do it. So he was like open with the fact that it wasn't like, oh, no, I'm Kobe, I'm doing me. It's
he
like
never like shied away from it.
Yeah, he was like, oh, yeah, fuck yeah, I copy like this move
flowers,
right here.
Yeah.
Exactly, which I think leads to authenticity. And you mentioned it, like we pedestalize these people, and we create these images of like, oh, like to stay with John Jones, or even like somebody like a father or a friend.
Yeah, it could be anyone. We're using because it's like what I do, but yeah, it could be
so it's like, here's this guy who's reached this certain aspect or certain height in this realm of life. There's not a single human being on this earth, no matter how rich, no matter how much achievement they've achieved, no matter how many fights they've won, no matter how many things that they've done that are considered great or good, I guess. Every single human being on the planet Earth has things that they're dealing with and things that you could construe as negative. Does not matter. It's across the board.
Well, I say we, not me, not me, but a lot of people move around with this mindset of it's something external. I got to get this. I got to get this set up. I got to do this. I need to start doing these things. It's like, man, cut all that out. Champions know that it's internal, no matter what. I'm sure there's guys out there that run more than me, that can lift more than me, that have better ground game, that maybe are better strikers. And I'm just talking about fighting. It can be for anything,
sure.
But it's only going to come down to really the internal, your mindset, what you believe, your heart, what you're really willing to push through, and the places you're willing to go mentally.
Champions act like champions before they're champions. So like Kobe, MJ, John Jones, they didn't start acting like champions the moment their hand was raised. It was in that dark gym in the middle of the off season when you're tired, when you don't want to run, when you don't want to do your practice, when you don't want to do et cetera. That's when like you're either a champion or you're not. And then that's why you get people like John Jones and Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods and all these people that have this. There's also an interesting dichotomy between like reaching a certain level of greatness in a sport and the compartmentalization that comes with that, where like there'll be this point in the sport and then there's like all this baggage of other stuff.
Yeah.
It's an interesting dichotomy as well.
Happens a lot.
It almost might be not a rite of passage, but it's almost like you have to have a certain mindset that like none of that shit matters. Like kind of like we were talking about earlier, like I'm focusing so fully on this right now for me to be the best at it.
Yeah.
Like none of that other shit matters.
I hope I get to a point, and I'm confident I will, where I have the opportunity to have those kind of problems.
Yeah.
And that usually comes with money. You know, they say money is the root of all evil. I'm not afraid of money. But you don't know really how you're going to act until you have it, and the partying and all that. Yeah, a lot of those guys at the top, they get in trouble with that kind of stuff. I think it's a lot of it is always comes back to who's in your circle. You know?
Good point.
Probably the same reason why you get there is who's in your circle, and then trying to keep those solid people there. I said nobody gets in, nobody gets out. Unfortunately, people do get out. It happens. They go a different path in life, but no matter who is in my circle, at different times in my life, I always hope that they push me to be the best version of myself and hold me accountable and keep me honest, because that's usually where I think people fall off, is just having the wrong people in their ear.
That's a phenomenal point.
Yeah.
You get to a certain point of notoriety and success that Chris Williamson talks about this. Like, it's easy to say no when you have one option.
Yeah.
But when you have 45, 50, 60,000 options, you start, oh, well, what about this opportunity? What about this person? This person seems cool, blah, 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 blah. But when you're nobody, when you're broke, when you don't have anything going for you, when you have no listens or downloads on your podcast, when you have no fights, the no's are easy relatively.
Right, exactly.
It's when you start getting, oh, shit, dude, I got like $1 million in the bank. There's this party. I got to fight in 2 weeks. So it's like, there's 3 different parties. Now there's 50 different parties. Now there's like my girlfriend, and there's just.
Yeah, everything. No, I mean,
it escalates.
I hear you, yeah. And like I said, these are problems I want to have. These are problems I want to have. And I hope I make the right decisions and I do the right things. And I think if I have the right people in my circle, that'll be inevitable.
Yeah, because they'll keep you accountable. Yeah. And then they'll also show you grace. It's like that's I've never thought about that way.
Yeah.
Do you have any specific moments? You're 4-1 right now, correct?
4-1.
Do you have any moments that stand out to you that are just like in all of your fighting where you're just like, this moment for some reason, like I mentioned that question and it comes to your mind, like something of glory or anything like that?
Well, as far as like specifics, like when I've been in there, like my actual 5 fights, the first one was just, like I said, this flood of gratitude. I'm in Hot Springs, Arkansas. No one's there. No one really gives a shit except for, my friends and family. So I'm really doing it for nothing other than future Dallas. I'm laying the groundwork. And that was just what I was telling myself. I was like, you got to start somewhere. And this is that moment where you step into that confidence. You step into being the person you say you're going to be. So, I mean, that would be the biggest, is the first one, right? And then just the gratitude of self, going through that and doing that. The second one, I can't really think of anything that was like overarching. I felt just felt very light and smooth in that whole exchange. Nothing in my second fight was really, there was no big hiccups or really any adversity that I can remember now that I went through it. It felt very easy, and I hope it always feels like that. Was
that the decision? Was that a decision win?
No, that was a third round TKO as well. So my first 2 fights are both finishes in the third round. Yeah, I just felt more, honestly, if I take away anything from the second fight, I felt just more like, yep, this is what I'm supposed to do. This feels like professional. Like assurance. Yeah, I feel sharp. I feel like calm mentally. I feel like this is good. Let's just compile this. Let's keep doing this. And then the third fight came, and I was like, just like way too cocky. I was way too confident. Not even from like a brash standpoint of like verbal, like things I was saying, because I'm always talking trash. But I just remember my mindset. I literally was not like sweating anything. I was like, dude, I'm going to steamroll this kid. Like, it's going to be easy. And I was winning the whole fight until I wasn't. So I learned the most from that. I mean, you always do. You learn the most from your losses.
Is that the one loss, the third fight?
Yeah, it was my third fight. You learn the most from that. So it wasn't one big thing to take away. It was a lot of little things. But I guess the one big thing would be mindset. The job isn't done until it's done. Anything can happen in this game, and you need to make sure you have these goals and that you see them through. Setting a goal and showing up isn't enough. You need to see it through. So the job isn't done until it's done. And so that was the biggest lesson I've ever learned. And I will approach every fight that way moving forward. After that, I bounced back immediately. And I dealt with more fears in my fourth fight than I've never really had nerves like that, to be honest. I think it was coming off that loss, the idea of like losing 2 in a row, because numbers don't lie. And I can say how great I am. I can train hard. I can be that great. But on paper, that's all anyone's going to see. And that's my resume. That's, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a doctor. This is my resume, my record, and what I do in those fights. So I was very nervous because I thought, man, if I lose 2 in a row, I'm 2-2. That is not who I am. That's not how I see myself. And I don't know how I'm going to handle it if I do. And at that point, I pretty much lost already in my mind. I went through it. I went through all the emotions of losing. And then I sat there and had a great conversation with my girlfriend just about, like, why go through that twice? Why go through that feeling of loss twice? Just show up, try your best, and honestly, whatever happens, happens. And so it was just a lot of emotions, like coming off that loss and that feeling in the stomach that we talked about. I just felt it more than ever. Then I had no warm-up because the show started earlier than expected. My hands got wrapped terribly. I had already been dealing with a bit of a hand injury in training that I hadn't really told anyone about. That was getting worse. And so I was just dealing with a lot. And there's this really cool clip that my friend Joey took. He was filming the whole thing. And I'm standing there in the back, and I'll show you after, because it really is like one of those videos that'll give you chills. I'm sitting there, and I remember just like I'm by myself. I'm like shadowboxing. I'm trying to get into that mindset. And it's like, once again, like that feeling of just release that you have. It's just like whatever happens is going to happen. And I wanted to double down on that feeling of anxiety, and I wanted to put pressure on myself. And I looked in the camera, and I told my friend, I said, these are the moments where people either rise to the occasion or they crumble. And I really could have went either way. And when I said it, I felt this like shudder in my body where I was like, ooh, you could crumble though. I was like, but I could really rise to the occasion. And I just felt like a gangster walking down, and had a great fight and did great and won by decision. The last fight was completely different. They're all different. Yeah. There's all these different things that comes from each fight. So it's a great question, and I can't wait to tell you all the other ones in the future when we talk again. But my last fight was at home. It was here in Austin.
Very cool.
It was for a local promotion. It was their inaugural event. They've never had an event before. And so just fighting in my hometown was super cool. So
more fans, more support.
Yeah, exactly. More fans, more support, more gratitude, more fun. And I just felt really happy to be able to just like express myself, and learned a lot from that as well. Just knowing that you really can create your reality. So actually I fought at the Palmer Event Center. So it goes like deeper without like making it a long story, but I was homeless. I didn't have anywhere to stay. I was broke. And my sister was a property manager at an apartment complex, and she got a free apartment for being a property manager there, like a free like studio, like 1 bedroom. And so she was letting me stay there. And every day I would like look out, the Palmer Event Center was right there. And not that I thought I was going to fight there or anything like that, but just that area of town, I was running a lot, just visualizing the life I wanted to create. Like, even though I had nothing in my mind, I was telling me like I already had it all. And so when I fought there and I just look at the apartment complex, it was just I just kind of felt like my life just started. I felt like it was all like happening for me. And I'm like, man, I really did create this. And I need to remember this because it's not done yet. I need to continue to create these opportunities for myself and see them through. You know what I mean? So it was kind of all the lessons in one compiled, this last one. And unfortunately, I haven't fought since because I had that hand injury that I mentioned. I had been putting off and fought with a broken hand, kept training, and it got worse. And so I had to get hand surgery in January. So that's why it's been a while since I fought, but soon enough we'll get the ball rolling again.
I mentioned, well, first off, thank you for sharing that. That I got that you just took me on like a roller coaster of emotions too. I'm like chills and then oh damn, lost. But
yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. I mentioned I'm doing like the lessons from my podcast.
Yeah.
I think it'd be interesting at some point if you look back once you have 10, 20, 30 fights, maybe there's a lesson in each of them.
And do it just like
maybe
that.
Even it's now where you can look back at your first 5 fights and really delineate and clarify the lesson that you learned from each. And it brought several things up. First off, the loss.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned sort of getting arrogant. I think it's just interesting how there's similarities because you get these 2 wins. You're like, oh, I am that shit, bro. Like I'm not fucking shit. Like what are you talking? Like I just smashed these dudes. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And then you get humbled, and that's life.
Mm-hmm.
And then it doesn't surprise me, frankly, that you were more nervous after that because, and here's why. You lose once, you can kind of
conceptualize it.
You can conceptualize it and write it up as could be a fluke. Hey, look, I learned a lot. Like that was my everybody lose, right? You needed that,
chalk
right?
It up to a lot.
Exactly.
Boom.
You face that second loss in the face, the potential of the second loss. You say, oh wait, but dude, if I lose 2, then am I who I say? Like
maybe I'm not who I. Yeah.
Wait a second, am I not the guy that I thought I am? And then so it makes total sense to me that you were more nervous for that.
Yeah.
The thing that I think from an outsider's perspective, who hasn't known you very long, the thing that I think is good about that is now you know what it's like to fight with because now you've fought with medium nerves, immense gratitude, lost, a little bit of arrogance maybe, extreme nerves, facing that second loss in a row, which like you mentioned, it's not like a corporate job or any job for that matter where you're, so I got fired here, but then I worked a year there and then good job. No, like this is literally your resume of work. Like this is your body of work that you're presenting to the world and more specifically to fighting commissions and fighting promotions.
Exactly.
Which is your livelihood, which I think is very, very cool. I also think it's funny that you mentioned that. I'm literally living with my brother, sleeping on his floor in his 1-bedroom apartment right now.
Let's go.
And in many ways, I see myself doing what you were doing where I'm like, it's not the most glamorous life. Like I literally sleep on a floor, like a hard floor like that. And I'm not sitting here saying, like, oh, woe was me. Like, look at where I'm coming from. Like I come from a great background, man. There's no 2 ways about it. I'm extremely grateful and extremely blessed.
You got a brother who has your back, luckily.
Exactly. Like imagine if I didn't have anywhere to go or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I do think it's interesting that when like a metaphorical, but also literal, like when you're sleeping on a couch or you're sleeping on the floor and you're still doing the things that you think that you need to be doing, like in your instance, you're looking at the Palmer Center, oh, look, that's kind of cool. It's like not even really thinking about fighting there one day, but you're still doing your fight shit, you're training, you're doing the things that you need to do, envisioning the life that you want to live. And then for it all, at least in that moment, for that exact season, it came to fruition at the Palmer Center that you were looking at, that you were passing, that when you stayed steadfast in your belief and your work throughout the time when maybe things weren't the best or things weren't where you wanted them to be ultimately, you kept that faith, you kept that steadfastness, and then you got to fight and win at the exact event center.
That was like 2017, 2018 time. And then I fought there 5 years later. So it's like the things you're doing right now, they're not going to, like all the hard work you're doing right now, it's not going to show. I mean, it will show, but it's not going to show until 5 years from now.
Oh, so there was a 5-year lag between when you were living there and then when you...
Yeah.
Wow. I thought it was like leading up to the fight you did that.
No. There's cool. There's a lot that happened. No. Yeah. It wasn't, no. There's a lot that happened in between before I got to that moment. Like, there are some doors that will open for you along the way. There's things that will fall in your lap, and luck will get you sometimes in certain rooms. But, man, whatever you're doing right now, you're not gonna really see that tree that you've been watering grow for a while. And you have to trust it. You have to trust the process. People say that all the time, but I feel like everything I was doing at that time, Dallas now is just now starting to receive from that hard work. So then I think, okay, shit, where am I going to be now 5 years from now? I need to start putting that work in now so I can see it. That's how I look at it.
Interesting that you brought up the tree example. I was at church 3 hours ago and they talked about seeds. and planting seeds. And a fruit tree, for example, you plant a fruit tree, you're not going to see fruit in a year. No. You're not going to see fruit in 2 years. Like, it takes a long time for those fruits to be bared and for that harvest to be reaped. And there's a quote that I love. It's more of an idea. It's more of a phrase. If I told you, hey, go grow a tree, you plant the tree, are you going to go dig it up in 3 minutes to go see if it's growing? No. Are you going to go dig it up in a month? Nope. You don't even know if it's growing or not. So it's a quote that I coined from, like, a thought that I had that I kind of brought together from, like, Alex Hormozi and a bunch of different people is, we must be able to tend to our gardens before we can see the fruit to be able to eat the fruit one day. Because, and I'm guilty as anybody of this, of being impatient in life and being like, oh, I'm doing the work now. Like, why am I not seeing the results? I'm doing this. Why am I not seeing this? Why is my podcast not growing the way I want it to?
Yeah.
The ability to do, Alex Hormozi says this, the ability to do the thing without seeing the results of the thing will allow you to see the results of the thing. So that's prime example. You're 5 years away from who the hell knows, man. So what are you doing now that's going to come to fruition then?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's like a big case with fighting because, man, we're all broke. We're all broke. We're all dealing with injuries. We have nothing to show for it. I mean, until you make it, so it's tough.
There is one correlation. There's many, but on the surface, baseball is similar to pro fighting in the way that there's the MLB, right, which is the pinnacle. You make it to the MLB, your league minimum is like $700K, so you're chilling.
Yeah, even like that's like the low.
That's a league minimum.
Yeah,
and I would consider myself blessed. I have several friends that are in the MLB, and it's cool. Not even about the money. Just one of them, Kerry Carpenter, is one of the most humble, literally one of the most humble people I've ever met in my life. And he's balling out right now, which is cool to see. But the other side of that is the come up. Minor league baseball is a grind. People don't see it. Oh, you got drafted? Bro, you're making $1,100 a week. You're traveling on shitty buses. You're staying at shitty hotels, eating shitty food, playing at shitty stadiums.
Yeah.
No one cares. Nobody gives a fuck. And in many ways, I see a correlation between before you get that big fight, right? It's like in order to get that big fight, you have to go through that, right? Like you have to go. You can't nobody ever just goes unless you're Bo Nickel. You just like fucking debut on pay-per-view. But
I'm sure like he might. I don't even know that guy's like story. He might be a rich kid for all I know. But it's like even the rich kids, even like everyone has a story. Everyone has a story, no matter like what you come from. Everyone has a story, and nobody sees the come up. Nobody cares about the come up. And yeah, I've had friends that have done minor league stuff too, and it is very similar. It's anybody chasing their dream. When you're in the trenches, it's dark, it's cold, it's quiet, and it's very interesting why it is we push through that, because there's so many things that are telling you to go the easier route. I don't know why I didn't get a real job. I think I can speak well. I'm good at building relationships. I'm sure I could have been successful with any of that. A lot of friends my age are getting married, getting homes, having kids. They've got the lab. They've got the boat. They've got the lake house. They got all these things that I'm sure I could have, but I don't really give a shit, man. All I really care about is who I am as a person, and I want to build a badass character that I can be really proud of. And I'm okay with eating shit for a while. And not that that's the case. I'm doing a lot better now than I was in the beginning. I have a very supportive girlfriend who does have a real job. Who makes it a lot easier. I just ate at Suerte last night.
There you go.
So
I saw that pic. Looked nice.
So I'm doing all right now. But I haven't made it yet. And like I told you earlier, it could all change like that. Shit could blow up in your face really quick. So I'm trying to stay the course, and I'm trying to do it in the most genuine way possible. And that's where my confidence comes from, because I know it'll happen.
Perhaps that stems back to even the first point of this podcast. Like I would use that word now looking back. The way you coach, I would describe as genuine. It's not you putting on a front. It's not none of that. It's the way you fight too, I'm assuming. I've never got to watch you live. Hopefully that'll change soon.
Yeah.
But it's just a genuine, in a genuine nature, a genuine being. And I think I'm the same way, man. This means nothing to me. And if you know me, like, it really doesn't mean anything, but I graduated from Virginia Tech with a business degree. It's a very highly ranking school. I have a graduate certificate. I could have gone and worked for a real estate firm, any number of jobs. I also believe myself to be well-spoken.
Yeah, you speak really well, man.
The ability to create relationships is there. I just never, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I always harp on this. Like, we're drawn to different things.
Yeah, exactly.
People are drawn to different things. Both my parents are corporate, have gone through that way. We're the traditional job, more or less.
Yeah.
And they've created beautiful lives.
Yeah.
I've just never been drawn to it.
Yeah, I mean, some could say we're probably doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
It probably would have been safer and better to go that route.
From like an evolutionary standpoint, yeah, probably.
You know what I mean? But we are who we are. I can't necessarily explain why I feel so drawn to this, and maybe if I sat down and wrote it all out, maybe I could better understand myself. But even then, I don't know why. I don't know why innately I was pulled to go a more unconventional route.
Well, I think I was going to use that exact word, the innate. Like, I think men more so than women specifically are drawn towards fighting. Like that, when you're a kid, like, you go play at your friend's house, like, you wrestle, you go, like, the sports, you're always like, that's just how we are. And I think a lot of times in society, actually, we're taking that away from us, which I don't think is a good thing. But so obviously you just laid out all your fights, which, like I said, thank you for doing that. It took me on a little emotional roller coaster.
I probably could have explained them even better, and I'm sure there's little gems in
I'll tag like
those.
some of the in the show notes. I'll put like some highlights to the videos and stuff too. That'll be cool.
Cool.
So anybody listening can go watch. The question I have about your fight career thus far is, it's really twofold. What does, and this is kind of a loaded question, but 15 minutes, or unless you knock the guy out, 10 minutes. How long are your camps usually?
I mean, I like long camps. I mean, to be honest, I really have like built a life where I feel like I'm in a camp all the time.
Yeah.
Like, back even then when I was talking about, like, 2017, 2018, I was already trying to like live a life of what it was like to be in camp to the best of my knowledge, but 10 weeks.
Yeah. Okay. So perfect. 10 weeks of work, of weight cut, of all this, like, diligent focus, the nerves, the fear, the excitement, the actual effort that goes into a fight. And I want to stop there and interject. Nobody that's even, you're doing an actual fight. Mm-hmm. I've done jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
People that have never done a live roll don't understand the tired that happens in the 45th minute of a live roll session or the 15th minute of a fight.
Yeah.
And you could speak on that a lot better than me, but the amount of effort. So basically I'm trying to build up 10 weeks, nerves, excitement, fear, the amount of effort you just put into a fight. You get your hand raised for one reason or another. What does that feel like?
It feels like I didn't waste the time. Thank goodness. No. Yeah. Like, you feel grateful. Like, you feel grateful. Like, because in hindsight, the time's not wasted either way. Like I said, I learned the most from my loss, and we've all heard people say that you learn the most from your losses. That's true. So there's this moment of gratitude regardless because of what you've taken from that. Also a big relief. A moment where you can really kind of just kick back and chill and be like, okay, I did it, man.
Let's go get some beer.
Yeah, I said what I was going to do. And everybody celebrates different, but my favorite way is to celebrate with those who went through it with me. I want to be with my teammates. I want to be with my girlfriend because they all went through that with me. So just to be able to high five them and say, I told you so. And they'd be like, no, we knew it was going to, it's just, you have your 15 minutes like you could never imagine. You're the guy.
Yeah.
You're the guy. And for the 10, 12 fights that are on that card, you're seeing that the whole night. You're seeing one guy, the complete opposite. Nobody gives a shit. Okay, good job, bud. Head down.
Pat on the butt.
No, but yeah, just you'll be good. But just depressed, like just this lonely, dark feeling of like, I wasted my time. Like, what did I do all this for? And then you see the other half of the room, the guys that all won, they're just like, it's the highest of highs and lowest of lows.
That was going to be my follow-up is, what is it like to lose?
Yeah.
You kind of just described it. It's the complete inverse. But the beauty about losing, and Conor McGregor has I'm pretty sure he has a book on this, Win or Learn.
Well, his coach actually has the book,
Yeah.
Win or Learn.
Yeah.
And it sounds very cheesy to say, but it's true.
If you, I subscribe to this, and it's very difficult to do in the moment. A mantra that I have ingrained in me is simple. Like you mentioned, something is really that simple. Life is very simple, in my opinion. It's not that easy. It is incredibly simple in concept and in principles and the laws of life and physics and nature. Execution is another story. So it's very simple to say, oh, win or learn, right? But when you don't get your hand raised and you just put all this work in and you feel like you're wasting your time, it's tough. But with retrospect, you can say, you know what? That was a good thing. Like, I learned. And then that's like, with that mindset, like nothing can bring you down.
Yeah, and it's like all lessons, it's what you do with them. I definitely learned the most from my losses in life, like we all have, hopefully. I wish it was very simple, like more animalistic, where it was just very straightforward, but we have these emotions as humans that just like cause this whole like different whirlwind of thought processing to go on in every little thing we do in our life, from the moment we wake to the moment we fall asleep. And I just try my best to be as intentional with all of those, so I'm not just going through the motions.
Yeah, and you mentioned your girlfriend several times. Sounds like a lovely woman.
Yeah.
And the support that she's been. This is actually, I've never really spoken to anybody about this, at least not on the podcast. I'm single.
Yeah.
What is it like to have a woman, the support of a woman that you believe in fully and who believes in you? What does that do for you?
My stomach, I don't know if you heard it, just like growled when you asked me. I'm like, I better say the right thing or she's going to kill me. So there's one thing when you got a woman in your life, don't slip up. She's going to get you. No. She's
going to like send a text like, what?
Yeah. Were you talking to her? She like already knows right now. Yeah. Probably just ringing in her ear. No. Man, I'd never been in like a serious relationship before my girlfriend Daniela. So I can't like really compare it to a lot of things. I wouldn't recommend people to necessarily be in relationships either, unless you're ready for it, and unless you have the right partner. I think as great of a time as it is that we live in, it's probably also the hardest and weirdest time in history to have a partner. I could go on my phone right now and see so many different beautiful women on my phone and think, oh, what about this one? Oh, the accessibility is just out there, and she could do the same as well. You know what I mean? Look at me. I'm a guy who in the fight world is on the come up. I have a lot of potential, but in life I have nothing. I could show you my bank account right now and you would laugh. Based off what you're saying, it might look a lot like yours.
Yeah, no, that's what I was about to say that.
So I really don't like understand what she sees in me. Dating's tough is I guess is what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. It's unless it's the perfect situation, I wouldn't do it. I don't think it's possible to even have a cohesive relationship that's positive unless you know who you are. Like other things, it's a learning process, and it comes down to communication. People say that a lot, but honest communication, it's tough. Yeah, I'm just lucky. I feel lucky. I feel like I have a good girl who wants to see me do well, who is very proud of me and makes me feel good about myself. So it really just amplifies who I am. And if that wasn't the case, I wouldn't be with her. You know, I don't need her. I don't need to be in a relationship. I want her. I want her to be in my life. And I've been very grateful that she's only made it easier.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because I think, I mean, I'm not a relationship coach at all. I'm not like purporting to be so, but it seems like the woman or the partner in your life literally will change the quality of your life. So it's to go on like this Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, all this stuff. These athletes, I think, a part of the reason you mentioned it, the people they bring into their life, a lot of times that's women, and they can be real drained. So I think it's just because I wasn't planning on asking that, but to hear you speak of her with such reverence and such pride that she's in your life and of love, really, like you just tell that you love and respect this woman so much. I think it's very cool that you mentioned her in your post-fight interview as well. That was one of the first people you thanked, besides your coaches.
Well, brother, if I didn't mention her, she would kill me. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, it's just like in that moment, like I genuinely wouldn't, like just from a financial standpoint, she has a real job. She makes good money, and she helps me with the biggest thing on paper, which is diet. You know what I mean? I eat like a king. I'm bringing in I'm getting in nothing but the best food, and I'm only able to afford that because of her, and the way she prepares it is great. My girlfriend's cool, man. Like, even if I wasn't dating her, I really would respect her and still love her as a person regardless. She has a crazy story herself, and she would be able to tell it better. She's from Colombia, and she moved here when she was like 9-10 years old, and just has a way more interesting life and has seen more things that I have seen. And so that's probably why she is as cool as she is. That's like, she's not just like some, like, no offense, like some basic white girl from the suburbs who has no experience.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure are great people too. But I think she has a little more grasp of reality.
A little more nuance.
Yeah. And so I think in today's time, it's hard to find that in a woman. And so that's probably like what I'm most attracted to, is that. But yeah, you know, the more I've bought in with her, and the more I've watered that tree, it's only given me back tenfolds.
Yeah. You mentioned, like, which I think is good advice, to not enter into a relationship until you like know who you are, or you know, it's like, you said something along the lines of like knowing that it's a perfect situation. How did you? And this is turning into a dating show, I guess. But how did you know, like?
Well, I mean, if you're going to talk about relationships, talk to somebody who's in a healthy relationship. So
yeah, no, it's true.
But yeah, I'm no relationship guru either. I said this is the only relationship I've ever been in, and by no means am I perfect. You know, we argue, we get into it, and there are times where our relationship will cause stress in my life and will make things harder. But also, I'm a bit old school in the sense where, like, as being the man in the relationship, I believe it all falls back on me no matter what. I believe it is my responsibility to hold it down emotionally and to lead. You know what I mean? I forgot what your question was, but just knowing who you are, like you said, like beforehand. I don't know. I don't think I would have attracted a woman like her regardless if I didn't know who I was, or if I wasn't who I am, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you're questioning a relationship, or if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't, you know? It probably isn't. It should feel very easy. It should only be adding value to your life. And what I would, and I actually, not that I knew you were going to ask this, but I was kind of thinking about this on the way over a little bit. And I might have mentioned it earlier too. Just the foundation, like anytime you start anything, anytime you're going to walk into something, you need to lay a really solid foundation. You build a home, you need to lay a solid foundation, or it's going to crumble. So in the beginning, I had a lot of talks with her about how I see myself, what I see out of my life, what I've done before her, what's going to happen regardless of her, and what I won't stand for or allow. You know what I mean? So I really laid that foundation and was very upfront and honest with her before a lot of feelings got involved. So that way, along the line, none of that was ever questioned or like taken aback by, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned, I'm single, but there's this, like, not proverbial, but just this, like, I have this feeling, I have a vision of the woman that I see myself with, and it's, at this point in my life, it kind of gives me solace in a weird way, but it also kind of makes me afraid that I'll never become that man. But it gives me solace that the reason that woman's not in my life is because I know the quality of woman that she is. And I know that right now, at least not yet, I'm not the quality of man that is worthy of that quality of woman. And it's just, the reason I brought it up to you is because it's evident that when you're speaking, you bring her up, you're prideful, you respect her, you have an immense amount of sincerity, like when you speak about her. So I just felt that like, because she's been brought up several times, and then in that interview I found it interesting as well that, like, behind, I think, Andrew Craig, and your coaches, you're like, and my girlfriend. So
yeah,
I just think that's cool, man. I think good on you. I think that it's very cool. And also her podcast, dude. Shout that out real quick.
Yeah. Well, it's all in Spanish. And like I said, it's geared specifically. They have a niche for her mother and herself, for Latina women and that community. Like I said, my girlfriend moved from Colombia at a young age. So her and her mom, the stories they have, and culturally, the ceilings that have been put on these women in that community are crazy, man. It's really sad. Mindset is everything, like what we've been talking about. And there's man and there's woman, and I can't speak for them, and I don't understand their hardships because I didn't go through it. But when they talk about it, and the women that they talk to and bring in, and the community that they're building, you can see it's changing lives.
Very cool.
So
I feel it worth mentioning real quick. I went to the Apple Store a month or so ago, and this is after I met you. I like looked up your Instagram, saw you had a girlfriend.
Yeah.
Saw that she did a podcast, and saw that it was titled the Empowered Latina.
Yeah, the Empowered Latina.
And
podcast.
So that's like maybe a little creepy, but
I mean, at least you're honest. Yeah. Everybody, it's a digital footprint for everyone. Why wouldn't you use it? Everyone does. So when people like act like they didn't look at things, it's just weird. I'm like, just say it.
Yeah, exactly. So there that is. I was at the Apple Store. A Latina lady was helping me buy my laptop, and she said, "Why are you buying it?" And I was like, "For my podcast. It helps me edit better picture quality, stuff like that."
It's an investment. And
she said, "Oh my goodness!" And she was Latina, and she had an accent, and I can't remember her name. I wish that I did, or I'd shout her out. She's at the Apple Store in Domain. She was like, "Oh, I wish I've been wanting to start a podcast because I just feel like there's something along the lines like there's not one that like I really like. I like the idea of podcasting, but like I want to start one." And I told her about. I was like, "No way!" Like my Muay Thai coach's girlfriend actually has one called the Empowered Latina. I think I can't remember if I said that correctly at the time, but if you ever find yourself in the Apple Store at the Domain with your girlfriend, there's a lady.
I'm gonna tell her this, and we'll have to pop in to see if we can find her. It's pretty hectic in there, but just like your podcast, I hope hers blows up because I think like for their specific situation, they can really help a lot of people, and I think for you and kind of what we've been talking about too, and I think we can help. I think we can help men not be so inadequate and step into their power.
That is a perfect segue into my last question every time. I like to have a general structure. Like I want to learn more about you.
Yeah.
Learn more about your life, whatever comes up. But I always find this, I've started adding it in the last couple podcasts.
Yeah.
We spoke about Tyro a little bit. It's young soldier in Latin. Somebody who's just entering the military. Today's world, it means novice or beginner. The way that I perceive it and sort of my motto is Tyro Experience is a podcast for the ones in the arena, the people that are picking up their sword. They're going towards the center of the arena and they're fighting for whatever that fight is. And so my question to you is it's interesting because you're an actual fighter, but outside of that context, which that is surely a part of the context of your life, what's the broader arena or the broader fight that you're in?
I want to galvanize my family and friends and my audience into a positive frame of mind and help them to understand that they can do anything they want to do. I am a fighter, an MMA fighter, but we're all fighters. We're all fighting something. And I believe what we talked about earlier was the most honest answer. I'm fighting to not be the person I'm afraid I could be. And I'm also fighting to double down on who I know I am and to become the best version of myself.
Well said. That's about it. It's pushing the 2-hour mark. Dallas, I sincerely appreciate this. You did not have to do it.
Thank you.
It's a time out of your Sunday afternoon. So this has been a real pleasure, man. Real honor.
No, I appreciate it, man. I've had a great time.
Yeah, right on. And with that, I hope y'all enjoyed the conversation with Dallas. Dallas is a certified badass, a great fighter, and a great coach. I have thoroughly enjoyed his Muay Thai classes, and as I mentioned in the podcast, the way that he goes about commanding respect while keeping the environment fun and enjoyable, but also transferring some seriously high level knowledge. It's a real honor and a real pleasure to be able to sit down with him and learn more about his story and more about who he is and what makes him the man that he is. Connect with Dallas on Instagram at the only trip D. That's THE only trip TRIP D as in dog. Thank you for being a part of the Tyro Experience. Until next time, stand firm in the arena.